Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pets, People, Life, and Longevity. I am Jan Jeremias, and I'm here with my pup, my canine companion, Tonka. And a little bit about me. I'm a trained scientist who began exploring holistic alternative healing about 18 years ago. I think I have to update this. I think it should be about 20 by now. I began my journey with the use of essential oils, and that kind of opened up a whole new world to me. I began exploring other modalities, Reiki, gentle massage, for pets and people. I'm the co-author of the top-selling essential oil book for pets called Spoil Your Pet, a practical guide to using essential oils in dogs and cats. And today I'm so excited to welcome back. I love saying that, welcome back. It's like, welcome back, Shannon. And so let's just talk a little bit, refresh your memory a little bit about Shannon. So Shannon's from California, and she is an unbelievable and beautiful dog trainer. And she is very into positive reinforcement dog training. So reinforcing positive behavior. She's a true animal lover, really concentrates on animal behavior. And she's a behavior consultant in case you want to reach out to her. I'm sure she would be happy to work with you. She has a background in zoology from Sonoma State. She's a certified dog trainer. She's a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner. She publishes and published a great tool called The Evolution of Dog Training, which is really amazing. And so welcome back, Shannon.
Hi, thank you for having me back. I'm really excited. I love being able to explore all different ways that we can help our pets, and our dogs, but all of our pets, live happy, healthy lives, which is why I did Truly Force Free animal training and the book, and do my Venture Pet Wellness dog training, is to teach people how to be able to have good relationships with their dogs and have training be positive and force free rather than forceful and really causing that dynamic. So, and I'm super excited because I do recommend oils and some of these natural modalities for people too. So it's fun to be able to get together with you today.
Yes, yes. So I think today we're going to share a little bit together about aging pets. I think it's a very different dynamic and very different experience having an older pet versus that sort of the puppy years, where in some ways we're prepared. We get a puppy and we kind of know, okay, well, this is going to be work and we're going to have to do training. And then they go into the kind of, hopefully into a period where they get a little bit more mellow and they become adults. Not going to ever reach that stage, but that's besides the point. And then they move on into having, being older. And then all of a sudden, different things come up. And so maybe you can share with us a little bit about your experience with older pets.
Yeah, so as a vet tech, I'm also a registered veterinary technician. And so for years, I don't work in a hospital now, but, I have worked with animals from the medical perspective when they have pain, and they would come into the hospital, or cancers or other, health modalities that you have to deal with when you're dealing with older pets. But then as a dog trainer, behavior consultant, I also deal with the cognitive part, anxiety that comes with that. They can get dementia. Sometimes the signs are subtle for some of these dementia, anxiety, just cognitive, delays that they might have. Sometimes they have more. So when our pets get older, it's really important, just like when we have our puppies, to have compassion and empathy for them, because when they're puppies, it's different. Compassion and empathy because they're learning. Compassion and empathy, okay, I got to be patient. I got to teach them. But as they get older, they start showing signs, and sometimes they're really subtle and we may not notice. But we still expect them to be that dog that they were kind of midlife. And it's important to watch those things. So not just health things like, are they limping more? Are they uncomfortable? But also what their brain is doing. And a lot of veterinarians are good about recognizing arthritis, cancers, lumps, bumps, those kinds of things. And so that's something to be concerned about, but also having, watching them in their brain. And that's where sometimes your veterinarians aren't as aware of things that can be happening. And that's where you have to be able to say, whether it's a veterinarian or you're reaching out to get something, or you're reaching out to a behavior consultant and you're like, okay, the behavior changed. And currently my lab captain is 14 and a half. If you check out Chili First Free, he's all over videos, but he was one of the best trained. He was my Karen Pryor Academy partner. So most trained, most obedient, like really my easy dog once I got him trained. And then a couple years ago, it kind of started. He had chronic ear infections in one ear since he was a puppy that ended up closing an eardrum. So I knew one ear was pretty much deaf, but then I started to notice that his hearing was going. So I had to change myself. So fortunately I had done hand signals when I trained him as a puppy. So we could still communicate because there was some stress. I would call him. He didn't respond, which was very unusual. And then when he realized I was calling him, there was a little stress because he was very good at being quote unquote obedient, like he just wanted to be with me. So then I had to start changing my behavior. So I would go tap him and I didn't have those expectations that he would hear me anymore. Then he jumped up on my bed one night and he had still been doing agility. And this was when he was about 12, 13, jumped up on my bed and hurt his back. Like it was like an instant trauma to his spine. Fortunately, it was during COVID. So it took us 3 weeks to get into a vet. Fortunately, though, I had medication that I could just give him in the meantime. And I did oils, I did heat. I had a friend who's a physical therapist. I used actually my natural modalities to get him through that 3 weeks before we could get him to the vet. And then by the time we went to the vet, I was like, well, I kind of have everything covered. They gave me anti-inflammatories if it flared up. They gave me things, but I'm like, but it was my natural stuff that actually helped him. But then also what Jen and I were talking about right before we came on is he's also showing signs of anxiety. And he was never a separation anxiety dog, never, no anxieties. And he's now, if at nighttime, he's ready to go to bed and he wants us like watching TV in my room on my bed with my kids. But if we're in the living room, it creates him a lot of anxiety. And I'm guessing it's because he wants to be in the bedroom. But I just realized that there was anxiety. So as a trainer, as a vet tech, I'm having to see this from a different perspective than maybe I did with my dogs because I haven't had a senior dog for quite a while now. And I was way more Western medicine focused then, not as much like natural focus because that's when I was still working as a vet tech. And, seeing how my natural stuff actually helped his back. So by the time I got to this Western vet and they're like, want to give me drugs, I'm like, well, I will have that on hand for a bad day if he needs a strong pain med because the other things aren't happening. But he's on gabapentin now and all the natural supplements to help, to help his joints and help his spine. So, we can do so many things and there's just so many pieces that I think, Jen, you'll be able to speak to, like oils and natural modalities that can help this, but recognizing that our senior dogs will go through a transition like we do as adults, where we might have dementia, they might have anxiety, they might have pain and deafness or, eyesight loss. There's a lot of things as they get older. We need to have that compassion.
One thing I noticed with Tonka, because Tonka's 12 now. So, it's different than he was 5 years ago. And I noticed a big difference. One is in the heat. He doesn't handle the heat nearly as well as he used to. And so that was last year. I noticed a big shift. And here, even as the weather starts to warm and we're not having really super hot days, but I can see a difference. And I just know that I have to alter his exercise routine, that we're not taking, whereas in the winter, in the north, we tend to take long walks during the day because the later we wait, the warmer it is. So, it's not in the 20s, even though we had a very mild winter, but it's not in the 20s or 30s. It might be in the 40s.
Yes.
And as the summer approaches, we do a lot more early morning walks to avoid that midday or afternoon heat when the sun is so strong that, and you can see it, like he starts to drag, he starts to pant excessively. So I think just monitoring those kinds of things. And I agree with you as far as behavior. I know my last dog who lived to 19. So yeah, she was very old, but she did have canine cognitive. And one of the things that she would do is you could just see it. She would go out in the yard and she would just stand there and not move for like 10 minutes. Like she would just stand there like a statue. And then I would clap and say, got to go to the bathroom, got to go to the bathroom. And she would go make. But unless I said something, it was almost like she got into this fog, into this daze, and she didn't know what to do.
Yeah, they get lost in corners. I mean, I'll have people, you know, I had one dog, and this was a little bit frustrating. It was a Cocker Spaniel who was adopted older. And I had worked with them. We did all this training, and they had a cat, and they thought we wanted to make sure the cat and dog got along. Spent all this time. Their relationship was beautiful. Out of the blue, he calls me a couple of years later and said he's attacking, you know, like he had tried to attack the cat. And so we did another visit, and I went through this cognitive canine cognitive disorder checklist. And probably, you know, 80 to 90% of the things we could check off mild, but you know, there was a change in bathroom routine. He was waking up at night. There were all these things. So I said, okay, you know, this was a while ago, but I said, okay, we need to maybe talk to the vet about, can we give him some medication? Can we do something to help his brain? Because this behavior could get worse with the cats, not because he's a bad dog, but because his brain isn't functioning the same way it did. And the vet was totally in denial that canine cognitive disorder even existed. Basically lectured, you know, though you don't even want to give him any more drugs. And then this poor person was like, you know, stuck. And it's kind of like when I talk to vets about aggression is usually fear, anxiety, or stress. Some of them, they're like, no, it's just a mean dog, you know? And I'm like, no, their brains do function, you know, very similar to ours. So recognizing that, and then if you need to, finding different ways, but also doing things we talked about, what you do and I do with Captain now, is I'm going back to some of those puppy things I did to keep him busy. So stuffed Kongs or food toys that aren't too challenging physically or mentally, but like a stuffed Kong is the best because you can fill it with anything. So you can do any kind of food that is not toxic, obviously, you know, whatever they like, you can change it every day. You can freeze it so it takes longer. You can have multiple, so you can give it throughout the day. And licking and chewing that will help calm them if they're anxious. It gives them something to do, and it tires them a little bit if you've ever been wired and tired when you're stressed, it's really uncomfortable. So, you know, if we can get them calm, then they will actually sleep. And I think we were mentioning, you were talking about, you were doing another class and your dog just fell asleep, but there was Reiki going on, you were essential oils, you know, he might've had his Kong. And when we can create that environment, just like when we are really anxious, we have to work really hard on creating our environment to be more calming. That will help these dogs that are getting older, but they don't understand why they can't do what they did. My grandfather passed away in his 90s, and he was a very active man. And we had to have him go in assisted living because my mom, he wasn't eating, you know, and he was getting some dementia, but he was so insistent that he was fine and he could still drive. You know, he didn't understand why no one was letting him do things because he was in that place of, I still want to be, you know, my young self, but my body is not just my body, but my brain is not letting me be my young self anymore. And being able to help our dogs through that transition, I think is just kind.
Yeah, I absolutely. It is a kindness. And like you said, and then it's some of us changing our perspective and recognizing. And I think it's hard for, you know, not being critical of vets, but I think it's hard for vets because they don't see that normal behavior. Like they don't see the behaviors a lot of times we describe. So we go to them and we describe it, but they're not experiencing it. And they're not also experiencing the frustration sometimes that comes along with the fact that all of a sudden they didn't have accidents in the house and all of a sudden they're making in the house. And, you know, and it's not, I mean, I remember when my last dog, Casey, started to have accidents in the house, and you could just see on her face how upset she was because they know better. Like she knew she wasn't supposed to go in the house, but yet she couldn't control herself. And no matter what I said, like I would go to her and say, I promise mommy's not upset. You know, I promise. But still they know that really they should be going outside. But
well, and they've had that for their years, you know, it would be like for us, I always tell people when they're potty training, you know, get that environment, like whatever texture you want them to, like if it's turf or grass, because then your dogs will learn when they touch that grass, they go to the bathroom. It's kind of like us, oh, I think I have to go to the bathroom. And you stop at a bathroom and then the door's locked and you're all, oh my gosh, now I really have to go.
Right,
Because
right,
our
right,
brain
right.
has learned that's where we're supposed to go. And then if we have to go behind a bush or we have to go somewhere, it's really like, unless you're a outdoorsy person that does it all the time, it's a hard thing for us to go where it's not quote unquote appropriate. So our dogs will have that same kind of, feeling. But then when I always tell people, whenever there's a change, do definitely make sure they don't have a bladder infection. They don't have a
Right.
kidney infection. Make sure that there's not a tumor somewhere, because then you have to be even more compassionate for their accidents. But speaking of accidents, I'm having an interesting thing with Captain. So because of his back pain, he can't squat like he used to. So when he poops, he walks, and because he can't hold that position. Well, I sometimes will leave one of my doors open so he can just come in and out. And I'm in California, so the weather's usually pretty nice. And sometimes I have to watch him because it's like he sees me at the door and he's like, oh, I want to go see mom, while he's pooping and he's walking. And then now we've had a couple incidents where he walks in the house and he's pooping while he's walking, but it's like he forgets that he didn't finish because he started outside. And and he doesn't have the control he used to have. So I have to let him out more frequently. Or he will sometimes have an accident just because he can't hold it as long as he used to.
Right. And I think some of it is like you're talking about, he can't hold the position. And I think that's not uncommon, where you'll see them where they all of a sudden they start to go to the bathroom differently because they have arthritis in a certain area. They can't bear as much weight in the front legs if they lift the back leg, and they can't stand like that tripod kind of stance.
Exactly.
If they're and then all of a sudden they're like, and so you might notice things like that. What I noticed also was the fact that, and this was also last year, that we did like we hadn't done a hike in a really long time. And we did a hike. We were walking, but it's very different because when we hike, I usually let him off leash. And so I always say for every mile I do, he does probably double at least, because he runs back and forth. Like he goes up the trail, he comes back to me. I call him back. He goes up, and we came back, and the next day he woke up and he was limping a lot. And I was like, oh, okay. And I gave him a massage with essential oils and everything. And then like, it was like me, when I go out and I haven't exercised in a while, I get sore.
Yes.
And in his youth, I never noticed that at all. He's very agile. He's very physically fit. But as he's gotten older, I notice it a lot more. It's like,
I have that same with Captain. So he's in my bedroom a lot because I'll have dogs coming in and out that are staying with me for the day, and he can't play with everybody anymore. So he has to be kind of isolated, but he gets to sleep on my bed. Like, he lives his great life. I mean, he's not tortured. He's on the bed, but, so he spends a lot of the day. And then when they all go home, he's out and about. And in the morning before they come, he's out and about. On weekends, sometimes, like if I'm working in the yard or I'm cleaning the house or I'm moving a lot, he wants to be where I am. I have noticed this. I can't, and I have to tell my kids this, if I'm gone and they're home, I'll like, okay, halfway through the day, you need to make sure you put Captain back in the bedroom for a nap, because if I don't do that, he can't jump up on the bed that night, or he actually doesn't really whine very often, but he'll start whining and pacing at night because he overdid it, not even on a hike, just not sleeping the majority, because he's following me in the house, out of the house, and I'm, pulling weeds, or if I'm, cleaning, he just wants to be where I'm at, but he's not doing that snooze. So being mindful of that and, being aware, that made me also think of some people my horse passed away last May, but there's a lot of elderly horses. She was 34, so I was really conscious of her exercise because she was 34. But there are people who sometimes we call them weekend warriors. They don't do anything with their horses all week. And then they'll take them on these really hard trail rides, like up hills, and gallop them. And then they come back and then they sit in their stalls, for a week. And that's not fair. It's the same idea, especially as they get older. The younger horses can kind of bounce back. But as we age, I know I have to stretch a lot more than I did before after a run, or I'm sore. So thinking about any of our animals, but I noticed that with Captain, he just can't. So if we go, like, I don't take him camping anymore. I don't take him on as many trips unless I know we took him on a trip in the snow because I knew, well, we were mostly going there just to sit in a cabin and relax. And I'm like, sure, he can sit by the fire with us all day. And he didn't get sore. But I also didn't let him go up and down the stairs in this place we were renting all day long. Like I had to block it off because he wanted to go. Every time I went up the stairs, he wanted to go up. And then that was going to be too much for him over a couple days.
Right, right. And I think that, there's a lot of things. I mean, I think that, they age better if they're thinner. Heavy
Yes.
dogs don't age well. It's a lot harder on their joints
Yes.
as they carry around more weight. And so in that way, keeping your dog fit is much
Yes.
better. And, and then there are supplements you can give them that help with joint mobility and lubrication and things like that, which are very helpful.
Yes.
As if you have an aging pet, and starting younger, earlier, like just starting at a younger age, giving them, I'm a huge supplement.
My horse was on Cosequin most of her life because I bought her when she was 12, and she had some clicking, and when she walks, her joints would click a little bit. So I started her right away on joint supplement. And I remember like she was 20 or something, and I'm like, wait, I don't ever hear that anymore because she had been getting the supplements for years, so it does make a difference. I'd love to hear, because right before we got on, I was talking about Captain. He gets sometimes a little bit anxious in my bedroom and I don't always know why, or if I've been gone a little bit, about essential oils that I could diffuse in the bedroom. I know the ones I like that help me sleep and things, but what are some things that you've seen helpful with dogs?
Well, I think a lot of what helps us helps them. I don't think it's that different. I think diffusing is always a really nice passive way to introduce calming, let's say, essential oils to them. You're not asking them, you're not applying, even though I think a lot of them like to have them applied. Some animals, if they're not used to it, aren't going to like it. And so, not trying to agitate them by trying to apply it, and just saying, okay, I'll diffuse instead, because I can put it in their environment. And I always say, if you are diffusing, allow them a way to get out if they want to get out. Most of the time Tonka's fine, but every now and then he switches rooms, either because maybe he just wants to go in the other room, or maybe it's just slightly too intense for him. And then he's like, okay, well, I'm going to choose to move. But I think some of the good, I think you mentioned to me earlier, chamomiles. Roman chamomile is always nice, because chamomile is really calming. And I think people think of calming or chamomile tea when they need to get lavender is a really great staple to have around, because lavender is really nice for calming. Trying to think of what else I use. I mean, I'm a huge frankincense fan, so I've used frankincense. I've used copaiba, which is a tree from
that's actually I applied that to Captain when he hurt his back. It was one of the things he let me massage. He didn't care about all that stuff, and so I did heat when he acutely hurt his back. I was massaging that in and with the and then I found I had a heat pad that you just put in the microwave, and it had, I think it was lavender. I don't even know, it's so old. I've heated it so many times. It's mostly just for heat now, not for the essential oil part. But one thing with the essential oils, and you mentioned it a little bit, giving them that place to escape. We always have to remember our dogs' sense of smell is so much better than ours, that sometimes people overdo it, when they do things. And I just reminded me of years ago when I was a vet tech, a dog who had allergies, but people were in denial of allergies. But then this dog came in with neurologic issues, and he was like shaking and quivering. So we were like, okay, what happened? And they didn't tell us anything, but I have a really sensitive nose. And I'm like, and I knew nothing about essential oils at this time. Nothing. I didn't even know what I smell. I smell, because I can tell the difference between which topical flea treatment they had. Like if it was Advantage versus Frontline, my nose was that sensitive. So I'm like, there's something on here, but I didn't know my oils. So we called, and they had put tea tree oil on his feet, for allergies. But it's important to know, like, not all oils, one, should be topical, and they need to be diluted. And this poor dog, I don't know, but I think they just coated his feet. So then when it absorbed into his skin, it turned into a neurologic side effect. Fortunately, all we had to do was wash, it off, and then the symptoms went away. But, when you're talking about these things, it's not once. I remember one time putting cinnamon in a tub because I was stupid. And I got in the tub and it was burning my skin. And I was like, what is this? But I thought, oh, the oils will just dissolve in the water, because again, very novice with my oils. And I didn't realize, oh, you need a carrier and you need like all that kind of stuff. So it's just important. They're so great, but then you always have to, be mindful of how you're applying it, what they're sensitive to. A captain's allergic to eucalyptus. And he'll break out in hives. So I don't even own any oil that has any eucalyptus in it in my house, just because if I accidentally diffuse it, not thinking about it, I don't want him to start becoming, having an allergy issue.
Yeah.
It's just one of the things he found when I found out when he was little. If he was around eucalyptus, he broke out in hives.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we all have possible sensitivities sometimes. And I always say that there are enough oils in existence, that they make enough oils that usually a lot of oils have similar properties. So there's another oil out there that's going to have a similar action when it's either applied or diffused. And so there's always room to sit there and say, okay, well, I can't use that, so I'll use this instead. And sometimes that has to do with sensitivities, and sometimes it just has to do with what you like. And they might have similar properties, but you don't really care for that smell.
I have a client who has a really anxious dog, and I've tried to get her to use lavender, and she finally said, Shannon, I hate the smell of lavender. And I was like, okay. So then we went to chamomile, went to some other, things.
That's right.
She was at first kind of shy, didn't want to tell me. And then finally she got close. She got comfortable enough to me with me, like, don't tell me to put anything lavender in my house, in my car, because I hate it.
Yeah. I mean, some people,
okay.
Some oils or people have very strong reactions to. I find that with patchouli. Like some people love patchouli and other people hate patchouli. And it's I have a client, a student who always says to me, she'll say to me, does it have patchouli in it? And I'll be, when say very similar if it has lavender in it. But they're really useful. And then there are things like Tonka has a collar that has like a little diffuser area on it where you can apply an oil to the collar itself. But there are different things that definitely do help them calm down. And and I think that that's part of knowing your pet and knowing what they starting to look for the signs, which I think that if you're a parent, you kind of know. It's like your own children, and you start to look at them and say, okay, what's going on? Something's going on today, and
it really is being like, it's kind of amazing to me sometimes when people don't pay attention. Like, I mean, it's not like a knock on anybody, but I think sometimes we just go along thinking, well, our dog's just these, they don't get all the things that we get, but they do. And it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your life with them. I mean, Captain and I used to do agility, and so we don't do that anymore. So that part of our change, but it didn't change our relationship. Now we do different things. Now he likes to snuggle a lot more than he did. He didn't want to snuggle before because he was young and wanted to go do things, Now we still play, games, but they're just different. They're just not as active. Or I give him way more Kongs and food toys than more like when he was a puppy, because he can't do all the activities he used to do outside. And and I just pay attention to that, and really paying attention to day, because there will be days where I'm like, how come you're on the floor more today? Is your back a little bit sore? Is that why you're not jumping up on the bed? Or is it just too hot and you want to be on the floor because it's cooler down there?
That's right. And as you're talking about Kongs and stuff, and Tonka loves his Kongs, and we have at least a Kong a day. But just what I do is I just take a portion of the mixture I make for his food, and I stuff it with his food and then freeze it. So I just want people to be careful not to give them extra, because it's a very easy way to help them put on weight. If you start to give them their meals and then stuff the Kong, and you're giving them a Kong twice a day, all of a sudden they're getting a lot more calories. And so
exactly. Or finding low calorie things. Like I have one client whose dog is on, we always have to watch his weight very carefully, because he's kind of like me, you look at food and you put on weight. So we put you know, some of his kibble in there and freeze it, but then we'll also put pumpkin, you know, pureed pumpkin in there. And so it fills it, it's lower calorie, but it gives him something that's he can enjoy, you know. And you can put chicken broth, if you put your kibble in there and you plug up your hole, you can put chicken broth in there and make your kibble freeze, you know, but it'll soak up some of the chicken broth, or vegetable broth, you know, something that has a little more flavor if you need it. It doesn't always have to be, you know, something amazing. And it is, I always tell people, and as puppies, I tell people, feed your dogs out of food toys all your meals. Like, let them work for their food, keep their little puppy brains active, you know, do it as much as you can. But like I said, you know, and they say this, and I know growing, as I'd hear people say, you know, life is a, you know, it's a circle of life. You know, you start off with this baby and you need all this care, and then you're independent, and then you kind of go back to the circle where you need more care, you need it. And that's what our dogs do. It's like, as they get older, they might need us to provide the mental stimulation for them. We might need to help them monitor themselves. They might, Captain started getting in the garbage. He's never gotten in the garbage before, and he's completely deaf. So like the other day, I caught him in the garbage, and I'm waving my hands like a mad woman because I'm across the room from him and trying to get him to look up. And he did look up. And then, because I was waving my hands like a mad woman, I think he thought I was playing. So then it comes bounding in his little lopsy-dopsy limp, you know, lobbing over to me. And I'm like, and then I just put I was like, I don't know what to do with you. Like, you were getting into trouble, but now you're being really cute. But I don't think you knew you were getting in, like, I think you were just being curious. And so instead of getting mad, you know, I try to prevent it. Like, okay, so we have to make sure that we keep the garbage empty more than, because it's got a lid. Like, he never cared about it when he was a puppy. So we just have to change it, you know, and letting it not make you angry. And just kind of go, okay, I got to change this a little bit because we have a different situation going on here.
That's right. And I think that, you know, maybe as a pet parent for so many years, there are certain things that are just automatic. Like, I never leave garbage out. I don't. I mean, I have a garbage, like, for years I had garbage in a cabinet. You know, I had the pail in a cabinet, and then now I have a pail that, you know, has a foot pedal. So the lid automatically closes. And, you know, it's just knowing that, because basically, I mean, I hate to say it, like, it's a very, you know, if you have it out, the likelihood that they're going to get into it is a lot higher, because they are dogs. And it's almost like you're putting a treat in front of them and saying, don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. And I think it's almost cruel. Like, just don't leave it out. Like, put it away. Like, if they have left to get into.
It would be like, my son loves Dr. Pepper. I have an 18-year-old, and he's like, addiction is like a Dr. Pepper, you know? And so if I just don't buy it 90% of the time, if I don't want him to drink a whole case, you know, and then if it's like his birthday or something, I get him, you know, something special. But like, sometimes I literally have to, especially when he was younger, I'd have to keep it in my room because it was one of the things, he had a hard time controlling himself. So I just changed, instead of getting mad at him every time he did it. But, you know, and if I'm honest, you know, if we have candy and I'm in a stressed mood, I'm going to eat all the chocolate. So if I don't want to eat the chocolate, I have to manage the situation and just not buy the chocolate.
That's right.
You know, and that's the same thing for our dogs. They can't say, well, don't put the garbage out for being too tempting. So we just have to like interpret that for them and say, you know what, the garbage is pretty tempting. Let's put it somewhere else.
Let's put it somewhere else. And, but I think a lot of their behaviors are still the same, but I do think they forget. Like, I think they are more forgetful as they age. And I've talked with people, clients or whatever, who always had a dog who used to do things, and then now all of a sudden doesn't do them anymore. And I think some of that is the fact that their brains they have an aging brain. And just like us, as we forget.
I mean, I have to write everything down. I got my, you know, I went on my run and I had thought of things while I was running, and I'm like, oh my God. So I got in the car and I wrote it down, because after our call, I might not even remember I even thought those things.
That's right. Exactly. So
I won't even remember to remember, you know.
That's right.
You know, we just have to we do those things for ourselves all the time. You know, so helping and recognizing that our dogs might not remember. And the more, if it's not, and there are some actually, good supplements for brain health for dogs too. So, I haven't put a captain on anything because I hadn't really thought about this anxiety portion. It kind of been, the anxiety been sneaking up. The back pain came, the ear, the deafness, but I had a dog on, and now I don't remember which one it was because it was a while ago. So it's been a while since it a senior, and I don't even know if they make it, but I had gotten this supplement just to try. They gave it to me as a vet tech as a sample, and I really saw it helping some cognitive control with my Jack Russell. He like, he was like, okay, I saw an improvement. It wasn't like he went back to being two, but just like with us, there are supplements that can help them with their joints. There are supplements that can help them with their brain. I can't do anything about his hearing. His hearing is a permanent hearing loss. So luckily he knows sign language. So
that's right.
Doggy sign language.
Doggy sign language. But I mean, the one I'm always a huge advocate of for throughout aging, but also is omegas, because
Yes.
our brain is fat and it needs healthy fats to rebuild itself. You want to, you have to think of a brick building. If you have a brick building, you're going to rebuild it with bricks.
Yes.
And so if you have something that has fat,
yes,
and depending on their digestive systems and everything, some dogs, too high fat isn't really great for their stomachs. Like they might have, just like people have sensitivities.
Exactly.
So, but people can talk to their vets about that, or a pet nutritionist, or someone who's knowledgeable about pet food regarding supplementation and,
and those, omegas and the fish oils and the things like that. Actually, for me personally, I have chronic Lyme disease, and I was having migraine joint pain again, about a year ago. And I went to my Lyme doctor because I only see him every 6 months. I'm in pretty much remission. But I said, oh my gosh, am I having a relapse? Is it slipping back, my joint pain? And he said, well, are you still taking all of your fish oils and your, omegas and your fatty acids? And I had stopped, I ran out of the bottle, and then just didn't refill it. And he goes, get back on that. And then before we worry about this, let's see. And my joints, it definitely helped with my joints. And so it's funny because I just started Captain back on. I'm like, duh, I'm like, I'm using it for myself. Why did I not think to, get you some? So I share, mine with him, because it's just a regular, fatty acid, just, that's safe and so I just give him a little capsule, extra right now. But it took me like, sometimes, I think I'm pretty intuitive, and I'm pretty together with my dog, but every once in a while I go, why didn't you think of that, before?
And I think that's not uncommon, because you were talking about you had stopped. And I think that sometimes we do that. Like we run out, and then all of a sudden, like a week or two or a month goes by, and we're like, oh, why did I stop doing that again? And you're like, oh. And then all of a sudden you buy it because it's like you have a brain blip or something, and you're like, okay, And so for our pets, I don't think it's, it's not uncommon, because we get busy, and then all of a sudden, the busier we are, the less we notice.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
And I noticed, the other thing I noticed, that he used to love when I groomed him. Like he used to love to be brushed. And I don't know whether his joints are just like are a lot more sensitive now, but I brushed him the other day because he's, his shedding has been beyond, because summer's coming. And I mean, I'll get through it, but he used to lay there for hours and let me brush him. And now it's kind of like, okay, mom, I don't want you to touch like that. He's probably just uncomfortable. And
probably, it could be that there are certain areas that are uncomfortable, that are joints, or, or muscles could be a little uncomfortable. But also, we don't know about skin, if their skin, because their skin has a lot of nerves on it. That's why their hackles will go up. Skin has a lot of nerves on it. And when we brush them, like some dogs, just like some people like deep tissue massage, and some people just want a gentle massage. I think sometimes as that changes, I have to do shorter stints of brushing now. He kind of did that same thing. And then especially when it's around his lower back and which is of course the place that he collects the most hair that needs to be brushed, is, on his back legs and around his tail. And that's the sensitive part. So, I do what I can, and then just give him a break, and then, let him.
Same thing with
I think
Tonka.
it's just comfort. Yeah.
That's the same area is
Yeah.
really where he needs it, like, sort of like by his tail on his hips, that
Yes.
area where he gets like, I could pull out the fur with my
Yes.
fingers. It's like
Yes.
so tufty and there's so many layers, it's
Yes.
like I can pull it out very easy, like just go like, oh, there's a clump kind of
And I
thing.
sometimes, if Captain's not feeling it for me brushing, but he'll let me do that. So like I will just sit there and we're watching TV. And next thing I know, I have this pile of hair just that I've been pulling just junk clumps out that are just dry, So, but we just, we have to just keep adjusting, just like us as we get older, we have to adjust, and I think that's so important just to be, like I said, empathy, compassion, and kindness, because they don't, one thing I always tell my clients, they don't understand this aging stuff. Like we don't like it, but we at least can like be told, okay, you're older now, like this, your body's changing. This is going to be, you're going to need this, you're going to need that. This is stuff we have to watch for. We can, we may not like it and we may fight it, but we can understand it. Our dogs are like, when Captain jumped on the bed and hurt himself, like he had to be off his bed. He had to be in crate rest for a while until, we had to do all these things. And you could tell he was like, what is happening? And we used to go, I teach agility on Sundays and he would go with me on Saturday to set up and we would go run, and he would practice on what I had planned for Sunday. And he knew that routine. And the first Saturday that he didn't go, he was like, well, why am I not getting to do this? Because I had this, he's not safe to do it because his brain doesn't quite realize that his back half isn't functioning the same. And that's hard on them, but we can't explain it to them.
Right.
They have a loss, but we can't explain it to why they're losing this thing.
No, that's really important. And just I have Tonka's been staying a lot with a friend of mine who has two older dogs, like 14 and 15. So they're small. So in general, I mean, they always say smaller dogs live longer, but
yes.
So they might have some years, but the arthritis in them and legs and stuff is very, very apparent.
Yeah.
When they move. And when they jump off furniture or whatever they're going to do, is you can see it. Sometimes it's the more gingerly the way they do it, or sometimes you can see they do it and then afterwards they, they'll walk differently or they'll limp or something. It's very obvious. And
it is, and you have to watch the individuals. Because then my Jack Russell Scout, she's 11. She's almost getting wilder. Like she's getting more playful than she's gray and she's getting a little cataracts and she has incontinence. Like she's got aging stuff because she's smaller. I think, she doesn't have as much of that. She's less likely to hurt. I mean, she could still hurt herself, but that smaller dogs, I think, can get away with more sometimes just because they have less weight.
Right.
They're smaller. They don't have as long of, unless they're a Dachshund or something, their spines aren't as long, it's just a little more compact for some of these things, but then they can get other things, cancers and, other.
That's right. That's right. And I think that, you said that Captain was never anxious and now is, and then Tonka's always been anxious and just gotten more anxious.
Yeah.
So, which is fine as long as you know what you're working with.
Yes.
And kind of looking at it, saying to myself, this is, at this point, this is who he is.
Yep.
This is who he is, and working with whatever that is, because the likelihood of them changing at this point is probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, it's something that in the training world, in positive training in particular, we talk about, you got to work with the dog that's in front of you in that moment, just like you have to work with the person. If you're training with the person who is there in the moment. So you may, if I have a training session and my client's having a bad day, I'm going to change the way what I'm going to teach, because that person's not going to be able to take in whatever I'm teaching if I don't adapt. Same thing with the dogs. You can have a dog who can't do that. Maybe they're more sore today. So don't ask for the sit. Okay. Their hips hurt too bad. So just don't ask for it. Like work with the dog you have in front. Okay. I want to do some training. Let's do nose touch, or, let's do something that doesn't affect that part that maybe isn't just like sometimes, I can't go on my run or hike because maybe my knee's too sore or my back is sore. So then I might do something at home. You know, maybe I do yoga that day instead. You have to meet the person and the dog or whoever where they are in that moment, because we are always changing. Every minute, every day we're changing.
That's right. And, you know, as you said, that you have to meet yourself where you are, like you said, you know.
Yes,
And so, you know, our pets are no different.
exactly.
We have to.
Exactly.
Well, one of my favorite stages actually is working with older pets. And I think that, I don't know, I guess I always feel like it's something that they give us so much love.
Mhm.
It's something that we can do for them,
Yes,
uh,
yes,
is make their quality of life the best as possible for as long as they have.
yes, yes, for sure. I mean, when my horse, like I said, she passed when she was 34. She just laid down. I mean, it was the most peaceful. I wasn't there, but it happened within a 3-hour span. Someone saw her at 7 a.m. By 10 a.m., she had laid down and just went to sleep. It was beautiful, except I missed her crazy and I wasn't ready, but that was my own side. But, you know, I was riding her, you know, a lot. And then as she got older, okay, we ride a little bit less. And then it was, okay, we're not going to, then I started walking her more. I just walked with her, you know, we did other activities. So I kept her active, but I wasn't going to take her on a 10-mile trail ride when she went, you know, as she got older. And, um, and it was hard because I had to accept that I wasn't going to go on these trail rides. My relationship had to change, but it didn't, because I was willing to accept that change. I didn't ever, I mean, yes, I missed riding, but I still loved the grooming we did. I loved the walking around we did. The time we spent together, just being together made it so I didn't miss. I mean, that riding wasn't such a big deal anymore. Same thing with Captain. It was devastating. I mean, he literally ended his agility career. He was already kind of in the retirement mode, but we were still doing it for fun. That night he jumped on the bed and ended it for both of us. And that was like, okay, well, I don't have a agility dog anymore because my Jack Russell thinks agility is stupid. She doesn't want to do it. So I had to go. There was a little grief, you know, because I wanted to do things. But then I'm like, all right, what else can we do? You know, and so now we do other stuff. And, you know, I still play with him in the ways he's able to play now that he's pretty stable with his back. And, you know, we just have our relationship just changed. And now someday I'll get another agility dog, but I'm not grieving that anymore because there was grief. And when that relationship changes, like if you can't hike with Tonka anymore, like you can't go on those long hikes, you have to go, okay, well, I can go by myself and I just don't get to go with him. I just have to make things different. I have to do something different.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So this was wonderful as always. And
Yeah.
we got to talk about, I think, a really beautiful topic, which is, you know, aging pets, you know.
A lot of people don't. I mean, we talk about puppies a lot or problem behaviors, reactivity, general anxiety all the time, but I think this is something that is important for people to prepare for, to recognize, and to accept. And instead of going into it, because a lot of people go, oh my gosh, my dog's getting older, and they like start grieving the death before the death even happens. Like, just still enjoy every minute you have. I mean, Captain could, you know, pass away at any time in his sleep. You know, we could have anything. I never want to regret and think, well, I lived that last 3 years worrying about his death instead of enjoying who he was in the moment. Same thing with my horse. You know, it was devastating, totally unexpected, and I missed her and I want her, but I didn't look back and go, God, but I totally regret that last 2 years, all I cared about was that she might die soon. So I worried. I enjoyed, and I was present with her up until the day before she passed. So
some of the
yeah.
things that I tell people to do, and I think now it's a lot easier than it used to be. One is take lots of photos.
Yes.
And I take photos of Tonka all the time. All the time.
Totally.
Like, all the time. Like my
nothing's
phone.
Worse than when they pass away and you have nothing to look back at. Yes.
That's right. Take lots of photos. If they bark, record it. I've done that. Like
I've been recording stupid little things like Captain can't hear me, you know, but he was out sniffing because I had treats on the ground in the backyard from another dog. So he was like sniffing, and I just videotaped him, you know, doing his sniffing. And then I got the video of him looking up and seeing me. and like, doing, and I videotape so much more of them doing their silly old dog things. And it is, I think, because it's so much easier now than it was, even 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
That's right. And so, and then if you really want to, I mean, I think there's some really great pet photographers out there, and, invest in having professional photos done. If that's, if that's your liking, or taking some of the ones you have and really, tweaking them a little bit so that they're, in optimum, perfection as far as clarity goes and things like that. Because I think those moments are priceless.
Oh, I ended up, as part of one of the things I have learned over time of having many pets who have passed away in my lifetime is something I do for my grieving. And I did this with my horse, and I've done it with other animals, is I make a photo album afterwards, and before it was actually, cut and paste and in a book, but with my horse, I had all my pictures on, a digital format. And so I was able to make it. And it took me a little, like, going through, because I went through as many old photos as I had on digital, but I had her before even digital existed. So, but I put and I had my kids with her and us doing things. And then I picked one that I put and made into a portrait, and that, for me, going through that and like remembering all those positive moments, for me, is a great way to deal with my grief and overcome, and kind of that way of grieving her, but honoring her at the same time. So that pictures are super important.
So, well, thank you, Shannon, for joining
us. Thank you
today.
For having me. And I hope that people will just keep loving those gray faces are the cutest things in the world. So just keep loving them and enjoy every minute you have.
That's right. That's right. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments, and we look forward to sharing some more soon. Take care.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to Pets, People, Life, and Longevity, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.